Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. It's Wednesday, so you know what that means. It's time for another midweek mini mail call. It's going to be a little bit of a longer episode today. I'm just trying to get through some backlog of older items, and so I'm kind of stacking them up a little bit. And before we get started with this video, I just want to mention that there is a second channel for Adrian's Digital Basement 2, and I'll have a link in the description. I put more quick videos, a little bit less edited, a little bit more, hey, this is cool, something cool I'm working on. Let me stick a video up about it. Also, candy reviews are going to be there as well. There aren't any as of this video's recording, but there might be by the time this actually airs. So without further ado, let's get right to it. We have a little package here, comes from Steve in Kirkland, Washington. So Washington is the state just north of me here in Portland. And if you've ever shopped at Costco around the world, you'll notice a lot of their in-house brand stuff is called Kirkland. And that comes from the fact that Kirkland, Washington was the birthplace of Costco originally. I don't think they're there anymore, but they were there originally at least. Very small little thing he sent. What is this exactly? Oh, neat. Okay, it's a little PCB. Let me just make sure there's nothing else in this little envelope. And there is a little letter in here that Steve has sent, but it's very stuck, or the actual envelope he has sent it in itself, or the envelope is the letter, which I think might be the case. Nope, here it is. Here's the letter. Okay, I tore it a little bit. Steve writes, I've been a viewer of your channel since the winter of 2019, and I'm grateful for your content you produce. I'm certain the vast majority of your viewers share the sentiment. Your experience with electronics and demonstrations of repairing old computers have taught us something new and undoubtedly helped many restore old devices to working order. My repair adventure started in October of 2019 when I brought my first computer back home with me after visiting my parents in Toronto. The computer was a Commodore 16, and it didn't start up. Surprise, surprise, the most unreliable computers ever have to be the Commodore 264 series. All those things, the 16, 116, and the +4, the most unreliable computers. He recalls that his 16 stopped working in 1987. So like just a few years after it was likely made. Nevertheless, I was determined to fix it, and I came across Jan Bita's content, who briefly mentioned your channel, which led me to find your 2019 repair video on the Commodore 16. After testing and replacing several parts over the course of 2020, it was ultimately your content that helped me fix the computer. Enclosed is a 6510 to 8501 adapter board based on the pin mapping of Andrew Chalice's work. I had the board produced as I didn't want to hand solder 80 connections and lift IC pins. Please use it to replace that unsightly hand soldered stack of IC headers on your Commodore 16 or however you see fit. Thank you once again and for your great presentation and resource to the community, Steve. Thank you very much, Steve. If you haven't seen my video where I fix my Commodore 16 using a 6510 CPU with this hand soldered mess of wires, I'll put a link in the description to that. But he has sent me a little PCB to do the same thing as that. So let's take a closer look at this on the bench. All right, so this is Steve's adapter PCB for the 6510 CPU to work in one of the TED machines. So the Commodore +4 or the Commodore 16, for instance, or the Commodore 116. I had done a video about using a 64 CPU in one of those machines, and there was a patched ROM floating around, a kernel ROM, but it only was for PAL machines. There was no NTSC patched ROM. So I went ahead and hex edited the NTSC ROM so that it could work using the Commodore 64 CPU. I think I have my C16 over here. I'm going to grab it, and we'll take a look at maybe using this adapter in it. All right, so my C16, it's already kind of bastardized, so to speak. Let's unplug the keyboard off of here and unplug the LED. Okay, so this thing, it's got quite a few mods going on. This is my PAL NTSC switcher. So this is a clock synthesizer chip here. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put links in the description to both of the videos. The clock synthesizer and an Arduino to control it. This also does the kernel switching because PAL and NTSC machines of this type have a different ROM. So this can switch between, on the fly, using the reset button, you can actually switch between PAL and NTSC, and it loads in the appropriate kernel ROM. So that's what all these wires are here. I recently had to do a mod on this because these were all connected with DuPont connectors, and they were so flaky. Like you touch the wires, the computer would reboot or wouldn't work. So I just soldered everything permanently. But this here is the CPU, and there is a lot of a mess going on with wires, solder all over the place. I think I'm gonna pop that out, and I'm going to use this adapter PCB. It should absolutely fit in here. And I'm just gonna have to kind of undo all those wire mods I did. I bent a bunch of the pins and things. So let's pop this CPU out of here. It's not even easy to get this out because it's such a convoluted adapter. There's sort of like a pin header in the bottom, and the CPU is jammed into it. I'll be glad to get rid of this thing once and for all. There we go. All right, so yeah, it's coming apart just because of the way I made my adapter. But so there's wires over here, and look at there's wires there, and nothing is permanently damaged. I think I should be able to undo all of this and turn this Commodore 64 CPU back into a standalone CPU. And I just need to install the correct pin headers on the adapter PCB, and we'll be good to go. All right, so to turn this into what I need two things. I need these types of pins, and I need the pin header. So the CPU is this is gonna go on the PCB, and the CPU plugs into it, and this goes onto the PCB and is what goes into the socket on the Commodore 64, or I'm sorry, the C16. So I need 40 pins of this. I think this entire strip should be exactly 80. So I'm just gonna cut this. There. Okay. All right, so on this side it says MOS 8501, and over here it says 6510. So it's a little confusing. It would have been, actually would have been handy if it literally said this side up. All right, so the easiest thing to do is take a socket. I'm gonna push these into it, and that is how it's gonna hold them perfectly straight so that I know after I'm done with the soldering, it's gonna go into the motherboard properly. So the pins are all in on the bottom, and now I'm gonna do the top side and doing a similar thing where I'm sticking a socket into those just to keep them upright so they don't flop around. I'll just place that down on the table and commence the soldering. Okay, there we go. I think there's an extra pin header there for the tape motor control. I think it could run an extra wire or something. Don't quite remember. I don't even have a working tape drive for those types of machines. They use a different connector than the standard Commodore 64, VIC-20, and PET. So I've never tested that. But this should do the trick now. Of course, I gotta undo my mod here, which requires me desoldering all these pins from the CPU here that I kind of butchered. So I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so the pins are all straightened. Let me get the pin straightener. I thought they were straightened. Let me just run it through this thing just to make sure. As you saw, I was using the solder braid there to solder wick to get the excess solder off the pins. I think we're ready to stick it in here. 6510, line up the notch. I can see it's this pin right here. That's the problem right there. Troublemaker. Okay, I think I got it. All right, notch is there at the top, so that is lined up. CPU is in there all the way. No pins are bent. So that, I'll just make sure it's really in there. Come on, it's in there. That's what's left of my old adapter. It was hard work to make that in the first place, but something like this is a far better solution. All right, so here's the 16, the Commodore 16. So the notch, I guess it's lined up with the notch here. It's notch there, notch there. Just push this in. Oh, that's so much better. It's a little tall. I mean, it's pretty much the same height. It's probably actually a little taller than my old one. So that's possible that it wouldn't fit in the Commodore C16. No, it's possible it wouldn't fit in the +4 just because there's so much clearance issues there. And now it's just a matter of plugging this in and let's see if this thing works. All right, moment of truth. Let's plug the power into the Commodore C16 here. Commodore 16, I keep calling it. Hope it's working. Oh, it works, sweet. All right, and it's running in PAL mode as well. And this is where if I hold down the reset button on the side of this machine here, and this will flash, I let go, it'll switch into NTSC. Bada bing, bada boom. Come on. Come on, it's the retro tank being slow. There it is. Now we have it running in NTSC, and it is absolutely working great with that adapter. Steve, thank you very much. I love it. In fact, I think I have at least another machine that needs this. So I need to go look up the URL that you have on the bottom of this chip here and go have some more of these made. I have now, I don't know how many machines I have. Anyways, I need to make some of these PCBs because ultimately I need to try to replace this adapter in my +4. And I have another +4 and another I don't know, I have a couple more machines. I have a feeling I have more dead CPUs to deal with. So awesome solution. If anyone else wants to make these as well, check the description. I'll put the links to those. Thank you very much, Steve. All right, we have a very heavy package here from Robert in San Bruno, California. Hi to all my viewers in California. Of course, there's probably a lot of them. YouTube does not break down viewership by US state, but California being one of the most populous states in the country, goes without saying that there's probably a lot of viewers from California. All right, what do we have in here? Aha, interesting. Seems to be a good amount of laptop-related stuff. Well, there doesn't appear to be a letter with this stuff, but looks like what we have here is a selection of laptop stuff. So here's a Panasonic Toughbook, and as you notice on the top here, it's labeled with Pacific Bell, which is the old name of the telephone company in California. Originally, there was AT&T across the entire US. That company, because it got too big, was broken up by the federal government, and it became multiple smaller phone companies. Pacific Bell was the one for California. Oregon and Washington's phone company, I think it became Quest Communication, QWEST, although there might have been a company before that when it broke up from the original big AT&T down to the smaller company. But Quest was the phone company up here for a long time, and that changed names a bunch of times. Now my telephone company here in Portland is called CenturyLink, which is in other states, but not everyone has CenturyLink in Oregon. Some people have Frontier, and there are some other ones, I think. And in California, AT&T, it's back to being called AT&T now again. Anyhow, it's all a rather complicated story, but if I take a look at this computer, oh yeah, it's a Panasonic Toughbook CF25, and it's in very nice condition. And I like this chunky handle that's on here. There is the included instruction manual for the CF25. It's a printout, but still very handy because not always easy to find those. We have a ThinkPad 701 user guide. Definitely seen better days. It's gotten wet. And here is a ThinkPad. Oh, look. And I guess this is one of those ones with the keyboard that goes in and out. I don't know if I've ever seen one of these in person. Wow, look at that. Neat. Okay, this will be cool to check out a little closer. Looks like we have a power supply for the Toughbook. This is the IBM ThinkPad power supply. This is a ThinkPad port replicator. Connect to the back of this computer and give you some extra ports. Looks like we have an extra battery that goes in the media bay for the Toughbook. And lastly, there's a little door for the Toughbook that has broken off. I can see the little clasp is broken, so that fell off. But wow, okay, neat stuff. So let's take a look at this on the bench. Let's start by taking a look at the ThinkPad. So these are all the accessories that come with it right off the bat. I noticed that the power supply cable is a little damaged and taped with electrical tape. So that's very sketchy. I do happen to have an extra ThinkPad power cord. This came off of a power supply I used for something else at some point. So I could transfer that onto this power supply. This whole thing is pretty horrible. What kind of voltage is this run at? Looks like the output is 16 volts. I haven't seen one of these. It's all a bit corroded with the pop out thing here. I guess IBM was trying to make things very small. Typical IBM power supplies were a brick, you know, that had a regular cord that came out of it. There is the manual. As I pointed out, it's the 701C or 701CS. Not sure what the S stands for, but this thing has seen better days. It's very, very stuck together. It obviously got wet. I don't know if the whole computer got wet. Quite possible. We have the original accessory floppy drive, and there's a lot of kind of white looking corrosion on the door there. I don't even know if that's showing up in focus. We have the port replicator. So this would clip onto the back of the computer, give us a serial port, parallel port, audio in and out, 2 PS2 ports, the power input jack, and a VGA connector. And that would allow you to, oh, I do notice that the floppy drive connector is not on here. That's somewhere I am missing. What's this? That's interesting. I guess maybe there are two models, one that requires you to have that extra space there or something. Not too sure. Anyways, yeah, that would connect right here on the back of the computer. And I guess it hooks on like this, like that. So you could leave the power supply connected and your monitor and cables and stuff, connect this up, and then you're off to the races. You don't have to sit there plugging all the wires in. Each time you sit down at your desk, you just disconnect it like that, and you're good. I'm looking in the manual again. I wanted to see the date. It says February 1995. So that's when this computer comes from, I guess. It said second edition, so possibly there was an earlier version. But yeah, this is the machine. Now, right off the bat, it's pretty sticky and horrible. ThinkPads had kind of a rubberized texture coating on it, and if you've ever had anything that had that texture on it, you probably know that they kind of go horribly wrong. Like over time they get sticky and they start to come off. I have no idea what the process is to get that off. I assume it involves complete disassembly and some chemical to strip that, and then maybe you have to paint it afterwards. I am unsure of that. I have seen videos on YouTube where people have had like parts of their car dashboard that's got that same stuff that's gone bad, and they have to send it off, and it's very expensive for refurbishing, and this computer unfortunately is like that. So if we look at the side of the machine here, maybe you can kind of see all the scratch marks on there, and that is that rubber coating. It's just coming off, and it's pretty nasty. So I think in here, somehow this is stuck. I think this is like where the card slot is. Doesn't seem to open. Oh, everything is stuck together. This is, I think, for the hard drive. It slides in. You can easily take that in and out. This looks like the battery door. It's also very stuck. Turn this around to the back. Don't really have anything on the back of the machine. We have this connector here. So you can't even optionally connect stuff. A lot of the ports are just missing entirely. You have to use that port replicator. Ugh, everything is kind of sticky and gross. All right, on the side here, that's the power switch. There is some cover here. Oh, it's rubber, but it's all decayed. Oh, what's under here? Okay, that's the floppy drive connection. It's not in great shape either. Audio connections and a modem jack. And there's the power input if you're not using the port replicator. And on the front side of the computer, really nothing. There are these things that are the latches for the screen, but in typical ThinkPad fashion, they're actually broken off, which is very, very typical. So those are just missing. And on the bottom here, we have something for the battery, which I guess is somewhere. It shows it there. Oh, here we go. There's the battery. Okay. So it's a NiCad, not even lithium ion. So I am shocked that that hasn't leaked, to be honest. That is quite shocking. Bottom of the machine is a sticky mess. There's some access hatch here, maybe for RAM, something like that. Another one right there. Who knows what that's for? And let's check it out. We're gonna open it and look at the party piece. So you open this computer and look at this. Wait. Oh no, it didn't work. Okay, well, that's what's supposed to happen when I close it. I tilt it up so the camera shows it. Oh boy, this thing, it's not even working properly now. There we go, now it's working again. Okay, so when I open it, here we go. Look at that, that's the party piece of this machine. Now the keyboard is not sticky and it's fine. It doesn't feel as nice as a ThinkPad keyboard that you'd expect a ThinkPad keyboard to feel like. But you got the little track point, doesn't have a touchpad. That was kind of, this is before that era. And we have the screen, which hopefully is an active matrix one, who knows? But yeah, it's nice. It's really, really solid. Like this has metal underneath here, and as you type on it, doesn't feel flimsy at all. And when you close the computer, oh, it's not working properly. There we go. It was working fine. This thing is definitely decaying. There you go, you kind of got to give it 2 pushes and you get a little thin computer, and it's not even that thick and it's not even that heavy. And from a size perspective, this is quite small. Anyhow, okay, so let's turn this on. I'm gonna plug in this extremely sketchy power supply. I mean, really, is this against my better judgment that I'm doing this? Well, let's try it. All right, well, the power supply's in the wall. What's gonna happen here? Nope, wrong side. Let's plug it in. Don't see any activity. Pushing the power switch and nothing is happening here. First, I think I'm going to take the battery out. Let's see, this has to go down and I can slide this out. This battery's probably shot. All right, well, let's grab the old multimeter here. See if this sketchy, dodgy setup here is doing anything. Oh yeah, 16.5 volts. So that is actually working, even with the electrical tape. And yet this machine doesn't work. I'm not half surprised that this thing's not working. It's in really, really rough shape. This thing has had a hard life. And it looks like, judging by the water that's on things and the corrosion I see around, this thing probably has been subjected to water. If this is this problem with the power, the not powering up, no LEDs or anything is common with these, and there's a relatively simple solution, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section. But otherwise, yeah, interesting. I think we're going to move on to the Toughbook, which probably still does work. All right, here is the Toughbook. Now, this thing is going to be far more durable, and it doesn't have any of that sticky rubber texture on it. Well, at least not on the outside. Looks like there's an extra battery pack, second battery pack, nickel metal hydride. Judging by the connector here, this must go into the media bay slot, the one where the floppy drive is in right now. And I think I saw, look, there's some type of connector here, obviously for charging it externally. So interesting. I mean, it's nickel metal hydride again. It's really quite heavy. It probably has AA's or something like that in here. Probably just filled with AA's. And it's very low likelihood that that works. We have the original power supply here, and we have the computer with that Pacific Bell badging on here. Now, on the other Toughbook I have, which is CF27, it says Toughbook here. But I didn't realize that basically, I guess for corporate clients, you could get your own company logo in that spot, which is pretty neat, to be honest. So if I flip this up, we have the chonky handle. This is incredibly chonky, just awesome. We have the latch here to open the screen. We have what probably an IR blaster type of a thing. There is a headphone jack here. It's covered under a little rubber cover for water resistant. Looks like this handle can just come right off. There are 2 screws here. If we look at the side here, there is the DC input, PS2 and mouse connector, PS2 keyboard and mouse. Usually there's a splitter because there's some extra pins in here. That's like an extra data line that is for the mouse and another one for the keyboard. So if you just plug something into this, you get the keyboard, or maybe you get the mouse. I think you probably get a mouse. And to use an external keyboard, you need a little splitter. Power switch. We have here, card slots, and there's some cards in here. Oh, that's what was broken. I think I had just stuck it on there. So what are these? Data link. So that's a modem card, right? Yep, 28K fax modem. And this looks like one too, but it is unbranded. It says fax modem on it. Is that the same badging as this? No, it's different. Similar. FM 33.6K modem, and this is a 28K modem. Well, Pacific Bell is the phone company, so it makes sense that there would be modems in there. Unfortunately, this cover's broken, but luckily it stays on without any issue, as long as you're not opening it. Nothing there. On the back, we have a Kensington lock there, and on this side here, there's a cover, and let's see if I can get this open. Ooh, is it stuck? VGA, parallel port, and serial port, and it was very, very hard to open. It's got like little metal clasps there. Interesting. And on this side here, we have the MP, or whatever, the media bay slot, which currently has the floppy drive in here. And this is where that extra battery would go. But I'm actually glad the floppy drive is in here. There will be a CD-ROM as an option as well. And if we take a look at the bottom, this thing here is what ejects that floppy drive. So you flip that cover open and you get that out of there. CF25, 15.1 volts input, bunch of different patents. Capital asset, do not remove, obviously from when this was Pacific Bell. Just peel this off. That was a pretty easy to remove asset tag. It didn't even leave any stuff behind on there. Funny. This right here has got to be for the docking station. It has a little picture of a PC. Oh, there it is. So yes, you would push this thing down into a docking station. Probably has extra ports, maybe even an ISA slot, stuff like that. And this appears to be a way to service the machine. So you can loosen these and you probably access the hard drive and stuff like that. That's awesome. Okay, so if we flip this over, move these cards out of the way. Right here is the latch to hold the screen down. We just flip that and flip the screen up. So the keyboard is here. It's in very nice shape. For some reason, someone took a Sharpie and drew a black line on the space bar, but whatever. A little bit of dirt on here, but all things considered, it's quite good. Right here it says Pentium, so this has a Pentium of some kind. I think my CF27 is also a Pentium. It says Pentium MMX right here. I think it's is that one a Pentium like 233? This one's probably slower. We of course have a little touchpad here. It's so small. It's funny to think like Macintoshes now have touchpads that are like this big, and that's all you got. And it's plastic, sort of like a plastic coating and kind of squishy. You got 2 buttons here, but they work fine. To be honest, this whole computer, as old as it is, except for the battery, probably works flawlessly. And the screen, it's in nice shape. I don't think this would be a touchscreen. Maybe some of these had touchscreens, but I don't think that would be one. It would be a resistive touchscreen even if it was, and those suck. So let's plug in the power and let's see if this one works, unlike the IBM. As I mentioned, I completely anticipate that this computer works perfectly. Okay, power is in. So far, nothing. The power switch is on the side here. I'll slide it. Oh, there we go. Lights all came on. And let's see if something comes up on the screen. Okay, there is something. It's super, super dim. So you won't be able to see it in the camera. Where's the key to turn up the brightness? It's function and the arrow keys. Let me reposition the camera. All right, well, so it is definitely working, and it's a little brighter now. Unfortunately, the screen is definitely active matrix, which is nice, but to get it visible in the camera screen, I'm having a hard time reading it. So it looks like it's gone into the CMOS utility here. Configuration settings are invalid. Automatically reconfigure system and continue. I guess we'll do that one. All right, we got a menu. It says setup utility. Let's go to system setup. Numlock on, internal pointing device enable, speaker enable, external monitor is set, simultaneous or internal LCD. Why don't we just do internal LCD? And coffee break password? Nope, I don't know. We'll just forget about that stuff. Oh, you know what? By the way, while it's sitting here, I can hear the hard drive is not running. It's trying to spin up. I hear it going, making noises there. So it's trying to get the hard drive spinning. So there's no chance that this thing is going to boot. Power management. Okay, power saving, standard, off, advanced. I'll set it to off right now. All right, supervisor setup. Wait, supervisor password. I'm going to go do some research to see if I can find what the default password is, because the CMOS got reset. We saw it was corrupted. So I don't know if this password is because of that, or perhaps there was one set, and even when the battery is reset, it doesn't erase it. It's quite possible. A lot of laptops, that was actually the case. It's like stored in an EEPROM. That way, just taking out the CMOS doesn't actually take the password away. So I'm going to go try to figure out what's going on here. All right, well, I'm back, and it seems that this computer has a weird idiosyncrasy that the password for the supervisor gets set when the battery goes bad. And that's a bit weird. I've never heard of that. But unfortunately, I've read through the documentation I can find for this thing, the service manual, stuff like that, and it doesn't even say what that password might be. So I think I'm going to have to try different measures. But before I do, take a look at this. Does this screen here look familiar to anyone? Does it look like IBM's boot screen when there's no working hard drive with the F1 key and the PS2 disk drive with a disk icon going in? Yes, it absolutely is. And if I hit Control Delete here, you'll notice that this thing is actually running an IBM BIOS. Copyright IBM Corporation 1991 or 1981, 1997. And it is licensed to Panasonic here for 1997, but I've never seen a non-IBM computer that actually had an IBM BIOS. That just seems so strange to me. Anyways, okay, for the password, it's telling me to boot off a floppy. I have a disk here that has some utilities that I think maybe can crack the supervisor password. So let's pop this in to the floppy drive here. It's a bootable disk. This computer has 64 megs of RAM, by the way. The hard drive in here definitely is bad. I still hear it trying to spin up. I have more laptop hard drives though, so I can replace that easily enough. Or of course I can use a compact flash card. On this disk, let's see here. I have a couple utilities here. I have KILLCMOS, and I have another one called, what is it called? CMOS password. PWD. This one is supposed to basically go into the memory locations where passwords are stored on a whole bunch of different computers, and then it kind of reverse engineers it. So there's IBM ThinkPad and IBM Aptiva. Well, I don't think either of those are the passwords, so that's not going to work. Yeah, so theoretically this should decrypt whatever password is stored in memory, and that is not working. So I think I might need to use this other utility, KILLCMOS, which is supposed to kill. Okay, I think that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to reboot. Now I think it completely erased everything in the CMOS settings, theoretically including the password, maybe. Screen has gone completely dark again. It's readable, but just barely. All right. And I think while it's trying to boot off the dead hard drive, I can't even turn the brightness up. But that KILLCMOS program, if you Google for it and you try to download it, it will say you have a virus. So I actually downloaded it on Linux and I copied it onto one of my old DOS computers with FTP so that I could get it onto this disk here, because it's not something that a modern Windows computer will allow you to download, well, unless you disable the antivirus. And I'm not really willing to do that because there might actually be a virus in there. So better not do it. Okay, so here we are in the CMOS setting again. Turn up the brightness. There we go. Now we can kind of see it again. It says it's corrupted as it was last time. Let's hit that and I try to go supervisor setup. And it worked. That totally worked. Awesome. Good old KILLCMOS to the rescue. So in here we have parallel port address. Can we disable it? Yes, you can. Serial port off and on. Sound chip off and on. Sound Blaster compatible. Windows sound system. So this obviously is a Windows sound system with some Sound Blaster compatibility. It's not going to be great. IRDA, floppy operation, so you can boot floppy drive or hard drive. We can set the password, which we're not going to do. And yeah, okay, so that's what we have in there. Funny how there was like nothing in here about the hard drive or anything, like disabling the hard drive or the CD-ROM or... All right, let's pop open the bottom cover so I can get that bad hard drive out of here. The battery's working. That's shocking. That's shocking. How do I even turn this off? Okay, is it off? It's got a red light down here. Okay, I think it's off. All right, so for accessing the hard drive, we should be able to pop this cover off the bottom. I think that will gain us access directly to the part of the computer that we want. If Panasonic was awesome, they would have put the CMOS battery right in there. Maybe the CMOS battery doesn't matter so much. How do you get this off now? Okay, there's an arrow that says it has to go that way. Okay, there we go. There we go, look at that. It's very similar to the other one. One of these will be the battery, if it's this one right here. I think this is actually the same battery that's used in the CF27. Just pop that in. There's a RAM expansion slot right here. And here is the hard drive, and it is sort of in this rubbery thing. There's a sticky rubber coating around it. So pop this up. So it's a little cover and it's got foam on there. I think this should pop out. Huh, it's hot. Toshiba. All right, out with the Toshiba, although I'm gonna definitely keep the sticky tape on the bottom here. There we go. You are no good anymore. I had bought these things a while back, and what this is it's a compact flash adapter that would connect in place of these IDE hard drives, and I can choose a normal CF card. They were pretty inexpensive from China, and I've had them in my drawer for a while. And there it is. Nothing really to write home about. It's just the slot and the little 44-pin IDE connector. And the only thing I don't know is there's one pin that's missing. And it's missing on both of these, so I just need to get it aligned. Oh, you know what? Actually, on the connector here on the computer, that pin has a little plug in it. So you can't plug this in the wrong way. It only will go on one way. So there we go. So that's it. And now I just need to get a compact flash card. Let me get one from my test bench. I'll stick it in there, and that should boot up. I will get another card prepped. This is just really for testing here. Let's see if we can figure out a way to do this in a safe way. There we go. It's very similar to the way it was, and this thing here is non-metallic, so that's okay. I can just stick that down in here. I was just saying I'll prep another compact flash card, format it on another machine, put Windows 98. I guess I could run Windows, yeah, Windows 98 would probably be the best OS for this thing, or maybe Windows 95 actually would be a little better, but Windows 98, copy the install files on there, because there's no CD-ROM drive for this thing, and then I can just do the setup on this machine itself and have a working machine. Of course, the benefit is, being a solid state drive, there won't be any risk of it getting damaged from shock, like this stupid thing. Look how quick that was. Starting MS-DOS. And it's not booting the disk because the floppy that I had in there is right here. We can run check CPU, and here we go, Intel MMX 166. That's a pretty decent processor in here, actually, and it's a sweet spot that I like to be in from a retro perspective. Of course, there's no sound right now because sound software is not installed. Oh, look at that. So this screen runs at 800 by 600, so you don't get the scaling. Well, that's a shame. Wait, the sound is working. What? I'm shocked. I'm gonna plug my little Bose speaker into the headphone jack here, and so we can hear the sound a little more clearly. Let's see, Doom. It works. I can't even believe it. That is so funny. Actually sounds pretty good too. Like the ad-lib emulation or whatever. Let's see if I can make this bigger. Performance is nice. I think the only thing that really lets this down is that because the screen native resolution is, turn the speaker down here, is 800 by 600, you know, we get the black border, and all DOS games are gonna look like that. So that's sort of an unfortunate nature of these LCDs. It's give and take. If there's scaling built into the LCD, then what happens is it gets the scaling on machines this old looks terrible. So you get like, you know, the pixel width is not right and whatnot. So I gotta say, I am relatively impressed with this machine. I like this computer. It's cool, decent speed processor. I wish the screen were a little brighter. It probably was a lot better when it was new, but those cold cathode backlights on these, they just get dim over time, especially as they're used. It's probably possible to disassemble this whole thing and find replacement cold cathodes or try to replace it with an LED backlight, but it's certainly a lot of work, and unfortunately that's what lets down a lot of these old laptops, even though this has the nice active matrix screen, which is quite good. I mean, it still has pretty crappy viewing angles, but at least it's not the passive matrix that we saw on so many of these old machines. Planet X3 actually has working music as well with no special drivers, so that's kind of cool. Anyhow, Robert, thanks for sending in the Toughbook and of course the IBM, and yeah, if anyone knows about the IBM and maybe a way to make that thing work, although it's so sticky and beat up, I'm not really sure it's worth fixing. It might just be more like a parts machine. But this Toughbook, on the other hand, this thing is pretty sweet. And plug an external monitor into it and get the drivers all situated. I could plug speakers and a keyboard mouse, and it's a very portable PC gaming retro machine. Pretty awesome. I will put a link in the description below to the CMOS password reset that I use at KILLCMOS. So if anyone has a machine that has like a CMOS password like this thing does, try it out. It worked on this machine and maybe it'll work for you. Oh, we have a little package here, and this one comes from Jens in Hamburg, Germany. Hi again to all my German viewers. Let's see what we got here, something small. We have a Christmas card. I did get this package on the 19th of January, but Jens may have sent it quite a ways before. It says, use, study, share, and improve. That's what's on this front of this card. Jens writes, thanks for all your videos. Really enjoy them, and it brings me lots of inspiration to get my old stuff going again. Included are 8304 to 74LS245 adapters Rev 0. His design uses SMD pins, which are really hard to solder, so he's going to try to make a Rev A or a Rev 2 version that's a little easier to make. Kind regards, Jens. All right, so if everyone remembers the 8304 for my Apple II Plus, that was that bus driver chip that I had to buy. I got one from AliExpress, I think, that totally worked, but they're pretty hard to find these days. And a 74LS245 is essentially equivalent. It's not exactly the same when it comes to the characteristics of how much it can drive on the bus, but it totally worked in the case of my Apple II Plus. I have since switched back to the 8304, but Jens had come up with an adapter to allow you to plug in a 74LS245 into the motherboard without having to do that little stack of sockets that I did. I'll link to my Apple II Plus video where I had to come up with that fix. So I should be able to pop these into the II Plus and have a working machine, and that's if I couldn't have found a replacement 8304 from China. And this is open source hardware, and unfortunately, like he mentioned, the assembly process is a little difficult. Wow, really kind of cool. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this on the bench and see how hard it is really to put together. So 2 SMD assembled units. Hopefully the camera can focus in on this. I'm glad you sent these, because I still really struggle at SMD soldering. So not a whole lot going on. I think you got very creative with surface mounting these pins here. And you had to do that because the footprint of the IC is actually wider than the socket that it plugs into on the motherboard. So my one piece of feedback, Jens, is that these types of pins are not really good to stick into sockets on old computers, especially on like something like the Apple II. Those sockets would immediately get damaged by using these types of pins. They're just too thick. They are not designed to go into IC sockets. The kind that are this type. So they are much, much thinner, and the pins are round. I'm gonna get one of the other ones to compare to. So you can just kind of see they are much thinner than these ones. And these aren't always guaranteed to not damage the socket either, but the chances of damage is far lower with these than it is with this type. Unfortunately, your little trick for bending the pins alternately back and forth like that, so you could surface mount them onto these sockets, not really doable with this type. These round pins, focus. Oh, that's not the right one. It's this one here. These round pins, if you bend them, they often break. So I do really appreciate the design. I'm not trying to sound negative. I very much appreciate you making these for me. I was very lucky to be able to find the correct bus transceivers from China, actually, and they worked. They were very inexpensive, and they worked perfectly. It's just that, yeah, for sure on the Apple II Plus has really sketchy sockets as it is, and instantly it would damage it if I plug this in. It would go in, it would probably work, but if I took it out, it would never work again. So I'd have to change the socket out. And I already did, if anyone remembers that Apple II Plus series, I'll put a link in the description. I actually damaged some of the sockets simply by using my oscilloscope probe and sticking it into the socket right into the pins. Actually ruined the socket, I think for the processor. So I had to change it out with a whole new socket because a bunch of the pins weren't making contact anymore. So anyways, Jens, thank you very much for this project. I will try to put a link to this. Did you give me a URL for this? I don't see a URL. You say open source hardware. I'll try to find a URL. If I can, I'll put it in the description. Otherwise, sorry, I won't find it. Okay. And with that, we're gonna end this video here. I wanna thank all my viewers who've sent in mail call items. I really do appreciate it. And like I said before, I still have some backlog items I will be getting to soon. So don't worry about that. And I wanna thank all my viewers who become patrons. You'll see their names scrolling up on the left side here. A huge thank you to everyone who's done that. Just the support is overwhelming. And additionally, I have my Adrian's Digital Basement 2 channel, totally worth checking out. I'll put a link in the description for that. And that, I think, is gonna be it. So if you like this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do, all that subscribe and comment stuff. And that's it. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.